Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 126, and as you can tell, George has the day off. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm Alan Haley, and today is October 3rd, Friday, 2014.
It's Friday. We're going to do some fun news. We're going to do legal news because, well, that's what Alan is here for. Basically, we use Alan when he's on vacation. Are you on vacation?
I'm on vacation.
Okay. We'll pick him up from a hotel room or, wherever he finds himself. He'll be reading the blogs and say, oh, no. He'll get his computer out and say, okay, Kevin, what do you need? Well, let's do a quick legal update from around the United States about what's happening. I heard some stuff is going down in Fort Worth. What's happening there?
Yes, there's a bunch of things going on in Fort Worth. First of all, the Episcopal Church last summer appealed the decision by the Texas Supreme Court. They filed a petition for review with the U.S. Supreme Court, and so did the Diocese of Northwest Texas in the companion case from San Angelo there, asking the U.S. Supreme Court to review the Texas Supreme Court's decisions in both those cases. The Diocese of Fort Worth, Bishop Eicher's diocese, and the parish of San Angelo chose not to file responding briefs, but at the end of the summer, the Supreme Court asked them, please, to file responding briefs. And what that signifies is that there's at least one justice on the Supreme Court that wants a fuller discussion of these issues before they can decide on the whole thing. So that's pushed the schedule back a bit, and it means by the time all the briefs are filed, they'll file responding briefs, and then the petitioning parties will file reply briefs. So then it will go to conference sometime toward the end of October for the Supreme Court.
Now, if I remember correctly, they need 4 justices to get the case held over, right?
You need 4 justices to vote to accept review, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Out of the 9, 4 out of the 9 have to vote to accept review for a case to come up. And so up till now, all those other cases that have tried to get to the Supreme Court from Connecticut and Georgia and from Falls Church in Virginia, they were not able to attract the votes of 4 justices, although the Falls Church case was carried over to 5 different conferences. So there was considerable discussion of that case, obviously, before the Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens with this. If it gets ruled on right away in October, it will be a denial. If it gets carried over the way the Falls Church did, it means the justices are considering, and there's a strong minority that's trying to get a group of 4 to vote to accept the cases.
It's my understanding that, in general, the Supreme Court only sticks its hands into things when they think the lower courts have really screwed it up.
Right.
And so we have to be under the assumption that the courts don't think the Episcopal Church and all these other churches have not screwed up what they're doing.
Well, yeah, I once heard a retired justice tell a story about what it's like to sit up on the highest appellate court. He says, we're like people who hide out in the hills while the battle rages in the valley down below, and then when the battle's over, we ride out on our white horses and shoot the wounded.
Jeez, that's good.
So that's probably, the Supreme Court's going to wait for a while to see how the law develops in all these various state court cases, and whether and when it decides to come in. That's up to, as I say, 4 justices to decide.
Okay.
So that's, and then the other thing in Fort Worth, the trial preparations going on pending this appeal. The attorneys for Bishop Eicher took the deposition of our presiding bishop in New York last week, and I think it was done and over in a day. They got what they needed for the upcoming motion for summary judgment. And so that's what's going to happen in that case at the trial level next. There'll be a motion for summary judgment, which the court will hear in December.
Yeah, I saw somebody tweeted that Catherine Jefferts Schori had been deposed, and I can't tell you how upset I was to find out it was Not that type of deposed.
Right, a legal sense of deposed.
Oh, well. So we're really, I woke you up from your nice vacation to talk about General Theological Seminary. It's one of the oldest seminaries in the Episcopal Church, and they have a shrinking campus in New York City.
Correct.
And I thought, hey, they're in the news. I got a lawyer. We can talk about what's going on. Basically, there's some union busting going on from what I can tell, but let's do a little background. They have a dean who is not the greatest personality in the world. He's upset some of the professors. They go to the dean with their concerns. He won't hear them. They address this to the board of directors of the seminary. This address is interpreted as a resignation. And now all hell is breaking loose. Am I close?
Yeah, that's close. That's very good. It's a real soup. The dean Dunkel is, of course, a protege of Bishop Howard of Florida, and so he watched Bishop Howard autocratically deal with all those parishes that were wanting to leave once the General Convention ordained Bishop Robinson or agreed to his ordination. And so Dunkel learned at the footsteps of Bishop Howard, how to deal autocratically with people who don't disagree with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid he brought those methods to GTS in dealing with certain members of the faculty who are rather sensitive on certain issues, Asian minorities, LGBT minorities, you name it, whatever minority there is there. I don't know if there's high church, low church minorities at GTS, but in any event, he's managed to offend them individually. And so collectively they got together and tried to appeal to the board to override him and get him replaced. Now that's always a sensitive issue in any academic institution. The board circled the wagons around its dean and refused to take summary action. It has not even suspended him. And what they have done is agreed to listen to the individual complaints of the faculty members who met with a law firm that's been brought in on a pro bono basis to interview all the people that have charges against Dean Dunkel and to determine whether there's any substance there.
Well, one of the interesting things, people are saying, well, why can't they go to the National Labor Review Board? Why is that not available to them? How is this being fought out just by people having good wishes towards one another?
Well, this happens to be a religious school, and in 1979, in a famous case, the United States Supreme Court held that the National Labor Relations Board has no jurisdiction to intervene in disputes involving religious schools and their teachers or their faculty, including lay faculty. So the NLRB will not touch this case, and that means that even though the faculty has formed a union, they can't go in court and get an order requiring the board to negotiate in good faith with that union. And the board indeed looks like so far it's not going to deal with the union at all, because it's starting to replace many of those individual faculty members who have declined to teach their classes. They brought in additional faculty from elsewhere to finish the classes for this semester. So at the same time, they have extended an invitation to the faculty to meet with them, an executive committee of the board, and to try to air things out. And that's kind of about the only avenue that's left open here isn't it funny? We have a bunch of Christians, and the only avenue that's open to them is to sit down and discuss things like Christians.
Well, and I was going to, this is a great opportunity to ask the great A.S. Haley, any legal advice for free you would give the striking professors.
Well, as I say, they, in my view, they don't have any real weapons to call upon in the federal courts or in the court system, because once again, there's the canons that apply here to the ordained clergy, and if this is conduct unbecoming a clergy member on the part of Dean Dunkel, then that has to be dealt with under the canons. And the only person, again, to do that is the bishop of the diocese where Dean Dunkel is canonically resident, unless he agrees to transfer the diocese to the Diocese of New York, transfer jurisdiction there. In either event, you'd have a diocesan bishop coming in between the board and its employee. So my sense of things is that they would not want to do that, and they will defer jurisdiction to the board looking into this. And as I say, the board seems so far pretty solidly behind Dean Dunkel. It's going to, have to lead to some give and take on the part of the board at some point, but I don't see them there yet. And when they finish meeting with the faculty members, that's when that's going to be determined, I guess.
Well, I noticed there's one famous millionaire professor who has not joined the Rebel Alliance, who's missing from this.
Quite so. Absent from these striking ranks is Professor Dr. Robert Bruce Mullen, who is the expert in church history who teaches at GTS. And he, of course, has earned fees of more than $1 million so far in testifying in various cases on behalf of the Episcopal Church. So, no, yes, you don't see him among the rebelling ranks.
Well, we'll have to watch and see how this turns out. Clearly it's one of those situations where the National Review Board would be kind of good to turn to, but we're stuck with what we got, and we've seen this over and over again in the Episcopal Church, that the laws and the judges and the judicial system is not always your friend because they don't follow the documents before them.
At the same time, you see the people, taking lessons from Catherine Jefferts Schori, like the board treating these letters that they wrote protesting having to work with Dean Dunkel, say, oh, well, therefore you've resigned. Well, that's straight out of Catherine Jefferts Schori's page book, and it's not the way to do things, and that's not going to help at all.
It's not, but like you said before, there's no authority they can go to and said, we're being raked over the coals by our previous employer and the engine with which it runs by, and there's no recourse.
Well, at the same time, the faculty does have this apparently in their contracts. They can be replaced in terms of teaching classes, but they can't be dismissed. So the board's going to have to look at paying two sets of faculty, one to teach and one to just sit there and protest. If they can't resolve this some way, apparently. That's what I just read this morning on a blog, that one of the members of the faculty said they can replace us in our classrooms, but they can't dismiss us. So they must have some sort of tenure. Well, and that really complicates things.
Yeah, I like that.
It's got stalemates on both sides.
It does. So, Alan, get back to enjoying your legal update vacation. And we'll certainly catch you in the coming weeks as more of the, I guess South Carolina's going to be coming up.
Right.
Certainly there's more news coming from California that we'll talk about. So enjoy this relaxed time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much, Kevin.